Welcome into I Said What I Said. I'm Brad 𝐬𝐻𝐾. That's Tyson Gentry. This is our college football playoff second round reaction show. Boy, Tyson asked me how I'm feeling. Penn State guy was at the game at the Fiesta Bowl, and I told him I'm excited. We're in the Final Four, but I was expecting to win, and we'll get into that for the Penn State Boise State game here pretty shortly. But a great win for Penn State, just getting that off the front. A lot of good games, I thought. I know people are kind of complaining again, like, oh, these aren't competitive. What do you guys want, man? This is playoff football. Every actually the NFL is field goal wins every single playoff game. We get blowouts in that round too.
Well, I mean, if it's not competitive, then 1, 2, 3, and 4 would be the four teams left standing. I mean, none of those guys are left. None of the buys are left. And yeah, you can say, well, it was Boise State and it was Arizona State. Those were good teams. This is college football. This is what happens. Do you guys see how success changes people? 2 years ago, Brad would have been wetting his pants to know that his Penn State Nittany Lions were in the semifinals, and now it's expected. And everybody calmed. He's hit me with the LeBron silencer, and I don't know what to do.
Well, the problem is, Tyson, because when everybody says, well, they have to get to this point because if you can't beat SMU and Boise State, you kind of believe that, and it is true. Like we said, it was the easiest path. But Penn State, we said this coming in, no team was going to benefit more than the expanded playoff because it was 4. Penn State lost to Ohio State. They wouldn't have been in this year. Now they're in the semifinals. So it feels good, I will say.
Yes, and it was nice yesterday, obviously, with the things that happened at the Sugar Bowl. Like, it was horrible, and that's not what you want to see. But it was funny to watch the college football playoff game end, and then Ole Miss is playing, because they're the other ones that are always kind of left out of this thing. And you look up and you squint and you go, oh man, I thought this was more important.
Exactly. So let's get into the games now. Let's kind of give our thoughts, what we saw, why we think Penn State won. So they won. They beat Boise State 31-14. I'm going to throw it to you because I want to hear your thoughts on this, and I'll kind of give a little bit of my homer angle and what I saw being at the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was exactly what not just we talked about before the show, but a lot of people. I don't think we were, unique in some of our takes, but 𝐾𝐻 Allen's a different, thing than you see in the Mountain West, and he was hitting to start that football game, and it was awesome because Nick Singleton was a little bottled up to start. Now had some really good moments, some bad moments. You mentioned, before the game, this could be a Tyler Warren game. Well, it didn't even take a drive, Brad, because it was like, oh, this is a Tyler Warren game. This is gonna be a long night for Boise State. They did a really good job of honing in on Ashton Jeanty when needed in the first half, and he finished with a good stat line, but I don't think he would tell you that was the game that he wanted to have. One of the things that we didn't necessarily talk about in our breakdown for this game, but we have in the past, and I think it bit Boise State in the butt pretty hard in this game, is that 2 years ago, Ashton Jeanty was a weapon out of the backfield receiving or catching the football. And this season, it hasn't quite been the case. But when the guy's getting the ball 40 times, you don't want to get him hurt. That's okay against UNLV and Colorado State and those guys. But when you play a Penn State and you're playing 10 on 11 on some of these long third downs, it was just like, okay, let's pin our ears back and go get them. Let's go hit somebody. Abdul Carter didn't even have to show up. I mean, this defense was ready to roll, and it was belt to ass. The final score might look close, and there were times in the game where it was one possession, and I think I texted you afterwards that even when it was a one-possession game, it never felt like it was in danger of a Boise State upset.
Yeah, and Boise State packed the Fiesta Bowl. Like, it was 3-1, 4-1 outnumbered, and you can kind of see that, right? It's closer, and they haven't been in a big spot like this in a long time. A lot of their fans were kind of telling that everybody's like, oh, we knew we were going to be packed because that's kind of the state of the program.
And it's like that's their bowl. If there's going to be one that they're at, it's the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, it was loud. I mean, they're doing pregame entrances, Tyson. I mean, it was like, we got to come out. We got to shut them up, or else this is going to be loud. They could snowball a little bit. And what happened? They missed the opening field goal. Penn State goes down and scores a touchdown. I'm like, wow, that's how you want to start. They get up, Penn State up 14-0, and it kind of stalled. And it was interesting, right? Like, Andy 𝐃𝐻, super creative. Thought he got a little too cute on some things. Like, you're gashing this team on the run. Let's keep dominating the trenches. And they tried to do a couple passes, and it was just passing situations, which was questionable. But you're going to need to throw the rock a little bit better down the stretch. And so maybe that's what he was trying to do. I don't know, but. Aller 13-25, 171, and 3 touchdowns. Like, again, stuff that this doesn't necessarily pop, like you're talking about, like Heisman numbers, but I thought he was really good. Like, there was 6 or 7 drops in this game that hit hands. Tyler Warren had 2 of them, which was shocking. Everybody was like, whoa. But we talked about this. The trenches are going to matter. The trenches are going to be huge. And even without Abdul Carter, who got hurt, which is, shoulder injury, we'll kind of see what happens there heading into the Notre Dame game. Even without him, Penn State was able to have the depth. Penn State was able to dominate in the trenches, and it was the size advantage that was noticeable. Like looking at Penn State in person, standing next to the Boise State team, I'm like, the trenches are just going to be dominated by Penn State, and that's what happened. Now, Jeanty, the way they were able to shut him down was impressive. You could see, Tyson, we talked about it. Yeah, Madsen finished with 300 yards, but the picks, and that's not how they want to play. And it felt like Boise State was just kind of running in quicksand. So it was a great defensive showing by Penn State to be able to bottle up Jeanty, who really hasn't been stopped like that, except for I think the first UNLV game really was when it was questionable. And Penn State, they should have done what they did and this showed their dominance, be the Big Ten team, beating the Mountain West team, and that's exactly what they did. Now they're in the Final Four.
Yeah, and they got a heck of a draw, brother.
Heck of a draw. Now, Tyson, I thought on the other side of the bracket, Arizona State, after it looked like they were down and out, was going to pull off the shocker. And we'll get into we'll get into the missed call of the targeting or the call, the lack thereof. But Texas, Tyson, we talked about this. It just feels like even when things are going right, there's just the other side of it that the coin flips. And oh my God, they're scrambling. And that's what happened there. They were dominating Arizona State, in charge the whole time. Then they just can't capitalize on drive here. They make a penalty here, a little turnover here. Oh, they go for it here. And all of a sudden, Arizona State's back in this game and they have momentum.
Well, it's a twofold a little bit because one, that's how talented Texas is that like they can play, so they can have 25 minutes of bad moments in a football game that matters a ton and still end up winning. 2 missed field goals here probably shouldn't even gone to overtime, right? Probably shouldn't even have came down to the missed field goal that sent it to overtime. If you're Texas, you're thinking we should have gotten out of here, with a 2 or 3 score win. I just thought the heart by Arizona State was awesome. I think that's what Kenny Dillingham promised us that we were going to get, and there was a lot of, I think, some misconstrued words in the media for, oh man, Sam Levitt, like 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭, these guys are talking so much smack before the game. They're being confident and saying that we're going to show up, and beat Texas because what do you want them to say? Oh, we're just grateful for the opportunity and blah blah blah. Who cares? 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭, absolutely phenomenal performance, phenomenal career. That face mask that took his helmet off might have ended up flipping the game a little bit because that's another huge momentum play if they score a touchdown there as opposed to a couple plays later. The overtime was weird, and it's just another example of why college overtime stinks because like you couldn't have gone and got a glass of water between when Arizona State and Texas had round one and then Texas scores right away in the second overtime there. But for as much as people talked, and you and I included, about this Texas pass defense is legit. They're really good. That's a bigger crack in the armor than we've seen most of this season long, and this was not the team that you thought was going to do it. And the guys that they are welcoming in next, they can throw the ball a little bit, Brad.
Yeah, man, and especially without Arizona State's leading receiver.
Yeah.
I mean, it looked rough at first. It was like, oh boy, this is going to get out of hand. Texas has the vice grips on. Levitt, 24, 46, 222, no touchdowns in the pick. So, and that was kind of the story, right? Like, it really was. Texas was doing really good early in this pass defense, like a bunch of third and longs, bunch of 3 and outs, or not able to convert on this because just a little mistiming or, hand in there and Texas breaks it up. 𝐾𝐨𝐳 was the leading receiver, 8 receptions, 99 yards. He also had 143 on the ground and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he was their workhorse, but you would have little pockets here like you're talking about. Oh man, we need to convert here. Boom, some guy gets open, or just always like late in that game was always finding the player. Somebody got open, and I agree with you. I was sitting there, and I was like, man, that's not really what we expected of this Texas defense in the secondary because they really haven't shown that susceptibility. But I don't know if that's a one-off. I don't know if it was, Arizona State found something that worked and went after it. And if that's the case, boy, they better be ready to fix that in a hurry. But I agree with you, man. That was eye-opening.
Yeah, I think part of it is Arizona State was a little bit underrated by national folks because it was supposed to be, Texas was supposed to do to Arizona State what Penn State did to Boise State. And then when, they were doing that, it was like, well, I told you this whole 12-team playoff is stupid. And then the game goes to overtime and the world's ending for Texas. Both these things can be true, that Arizona State was better than people thought and Texas was better than them and should have performed better than they did in this football game. So that was an interesting juxtaposition that we found. But Quinn Ewers did just enough. He had a couple puke-inducing, like almost interceptions that could have really flipped this thing at certain points. But Texas is still away. Like they win, they made the semifinals 2 years in a row, and so you and I have been guilty at times of piling on to the Texas Longhorns, but they're back. I guess you got to win one for real, but they're back in the Final Four, which is fantastic for them, and the institution and all of that stuff. But man, that was not a. I think 3 winners this weekend, you gained a ton of confidence going into the next round. And with Texas, you're kind of, but part of it is the way Ohio State looked. So let's get into that.
Yeah, true. I'll do a finishing touch here, Tyson, just because when I was looking at the box score, this jumped out to me. Texas had a hard time running against Georgia, right? Like that was like the 2 things. Remember, they're like, well, that was just against Georgia, and their front is really good. 30 carries, 53 yards, averaging 1.8 yards a carry. Really? I mean, if that's what we're going to get going forward from Texas, and maybe that's not the case, but let's talk about who's remaining, and we'll get into it now. That's something to keep in mind as we go forward, because Ohio State just completely dominated Oregon, dude. I mean, before you looked up, it was like, whoa, this game's over. I mean, that's what it was. And I don't want to pat myself on the back here, but I think, Tyson, this is a tale as old as time in college football. You just can't beat them twice, right? I mean, Ohio State came out and blitzed them, and that's really what it was, and they were able to keep the foot down on the pedal, and that's something we've seen Ohio State not be able to do under Ryan Day at times.
Yeah, we're not doing our normal college football show, but if we did have the hand up segment, this is where I say I'm sorry. I was wrong on Oregon. I was wrong on the way that they were going to come out and look. Dillon Gabriel's been in college for 15 years, and he was so confused when they were passing off crossers. Like it wasn't, unique or interesting or, something that he's never seen before that Ohio State's defense was doing. Because we'll talk about the offense. But that defense really just kind of jumped on Oregon and was like, you are only going to be able to do this one thing today because that's the way the game script goes. So you can turn around and hand it off if you want, but you're not winning a game like that. And Oregon just wasn't able to get those mesh concepts, those crossers, deep post, stuff like that. That's just that they've been relying on this season. It just wasn't open. And when it's not open, they were getting to the quarterback, whether they were held or not, Brad. They haven't drew a holding call, since like October or something like that at this point. There was a lot of opportunities for Oregon to get backed up even farther in that game. So, for as much as I am chomping at the bit to talk about this Ohio State offense, I did want to give the defense a little bit of a shout.
It was impressive. And, I'm looking at the rushing numbers here. Jordan James, only 7 of 14. This is a guy last time we highlighted, he had a really good game. He was able to gash him. And when you get blitzed early in the first quarter like that, you can't just start running the football. Your offense changes. And when it kept snowballing, all of a sudden you're going to be in passing set. So, that's not necessarily something that's too indicative, but look at this, 28 carries for negative 43 yards.
Yeah.
Dillon Gabriel, 12 carries, negative 43 yards. There's some sack stuff in there. Of course, it's college. It's weird, but holy smokes, man. That number sticks out.
Yeah, he got his brains beat in. At a certain point, you were just like, man, I know it's his last game, but you got to protect the kid.
It was nuts. Now, okay, let's get to the offense because I want to hear your thought. To me, off the top, and we'll kind of go down it. Will Howard, the last 2 games he's played, he's taken his game to the next level. This is who Ohio State thought they were getting in the transfer portal when they brought in a veteran. Guys played a lot of college football from Kansas State. He has been on point, 17 of 26, 319, 3 touchdowns, pushing the ball down the field accurately. Well, what do you think about Will Howard right now?
No, he's on fire. He's like sometimes in college football, these guys that, might not be the best player in the country. They find these little pockets of time where they're just unmessed with the ball. JJ McCarthy did it a year ago where it was like Michigan can't even throw the football. And then every time they had to, when the games, mattered at the end, JJ was nails. And that's kind of like Will Howard was nails to start the game and he didn't have to be to end, but he was. I mean, it was 200 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first half for this guy. And it's maybe life's a little easier, Brad, when you have the best wide receiver in the country. We're Ted McMillan guys, we're Luther Burden guys. All this Jeremiah Smith is different than these dudes, man.
So before we got on here, and I was talking to my brother when we were watching the game, and I was like, Jeremiah Smith is the best wide receiver talent I've seen in my entire life. We were getting on it. We said yes, you and me, as we went through. So we're draft guys. We're kind of going through the Rolodex, like, all right. I think Julio Jones is the only comp. I mean, just the body size, the strength, the hands, the way they high point. That's the only other person I think. And I think Jeremiah Smith is further along than Julio right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my head as an LSU guy, my mind immediately goes to Jamar Chase. You sit out a year of college football and you still go. Was he 4 or 6 or he was 6 because Kyle Pitts went 4 in that draft, which is
And
still
Sewell
funny to
went
think about.
5, I believe.
I think so.
Or
Whatever ended up
yeah.
being. But Jamar was an awesome prospect too. But he wasn't doing this at 18, and that's the thing. And this isn't Jeremiah Smith beating up on your mid-level, low-level Big Ten teams. This was the number 1 team in the country, undefeated. And this was after when we saw them against Michigan. They don't throw the football, they lose the game, and then they come out for the college football playoffs, and it was like, oh, we're just going to use these 2 guys. And Ugbuka had a great game too, and it kind of feels like he's being swept under the rug here, but he was an awesome 3 for a year or 2 at Ohio State, and he was a really good fill-in piece. But Jeremiah Smith is a story, and we can't only talk about the passing game, Brad, because this, like the 2-headed monster they have at running back, it's disgusting.
8 carries, 94 yards for TreVeyon Henderson, 11.8 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, 17 carries, 85 yards. Now, this, Tyson, when our preview, I said, keep it on Henderson to get the rock a little bit more because he was effective in the first matchup. I thought the carry numbers were going to be flipped, to be completely honest with you. But Henderson was just as effective, more effective, 8 carries for 94, 2 touchdowns. That was the guy. This is what Ohio State was expecting. Their ability to run when they're throwing the football. This is reminding me of Chip Kelly back at Oregon, right? Like he wants to run the football first. Okay, then we spread it out. We have our elite athletes go run at you. Then the box can't be stacked. Then our better athletes at running back are able to beat your athletes. That's what we're seeing right now. Is this able to go forward? That's something for next week. But this right now, this is exactly what Ohio State thought they were getting, right? Like this is the team. The elite quarterback play, the elite 2-headed monster attack, and then the 2 stars on the outside, Jeremiah Smith being the guy, and Ugbuka 5 catches, 72 and a touchdown, being able to supplement whatever else happens. Like it's impressive.
Yeah, if you're ever catching yourself thinking, I wish that we still had a 14 college football playoff, just remember a month ago, everyone was ready to bury these guys. The season was over and it was time to fire Ryan Day. Ohio State's dead. And now it's like, oh yeah, they're the best team in the country. So we could have skipped this whole point from August till now and just arrived here.
We could have. Now I want to talk about Oregon a little bit. I want to talk about Oregon because, that is a big story. They were undefeated. A lot of people are like, I don't know how Oregon's going to lose. What do you think about Oregon? Did they get – they kind of got screwed by the bye, but like Dan Lanning said, if you're going to win a national championship, you got to beat the best teams. And so I think they went into it with the right mindset. They got beat here, but was it something that they're missing? Did they just get outplayed? Like, what's your thought on the state of Oregon as it stands right now?
I think they're fine. They just had an undefeated season. They win the Big Ten conference championship in their first year in the conference. That's like a huge boon for Oregon. So you can sit here and say, well, they didn't even make the college football playoff semifinals. That's a failure. Look, this is going to happen more and more and more as we keep going on and they keep expanding. The 1 seed is going to draw the guys who lost to end the regular season. And this year it was Ohio State. Next year it could be Alabama or Penn State or Michigan or whoever else. I thought Oregon had a heck of a season. And look, sometimes you just show up a little flat and before you know it, the game's over because Ohio State was juiced to start that thing. And sure, Oregon probably was juiced too, but it got away from them quickly. I didn't think it was one of those deals by the end of the first quarter. The Arizona State-Texas game, to me, when I was watching it, always kind of felt like there's a chance that this thing could flip and Arizona State could at least catch up. In this game, it felt like middle of the first quarter. Well, that's that. I guess I'm still going to watch, but I'm going to have my phone close by in case I want to play a game or something.
It was fast and it did not slow down. So that was what I was shocked about, mostly, Tyson. And you and I are big Dan Lanning guys. You love him, and I like him a lot. And I can't say that I'm on the same level as you with him because you love him so much. Not that I don't like him, but it was surprising. And to me, where I'm kind of looking at Oregon, during the Pac-12 last year, you ran through the Big Ten. Impressive year this year compared to last year, in my opinion. But you played the 2 teams, Washington, who went to the national championship, lost twice. That was with your senior-laden, experienced quarterback, 𝐿. This year, you get completely decimated on defense by Penn State. You did enough offensively to be able to beat Penn State in the Big Ten championship game. You had a crazy win against Ohio State at home. Ohio State had a chance to win the clock thing, kind of weird ending. Then you come into this game and you get blitzed by Ohio State. So if we look, at the top level, I think Oregon is going to get there. They recruit at a high enough level, an elite level. Their NIL is allowing them to dominate the transfer portal. This is going to work. But so far, I think, we look at the record, it's gaudy and all those things, but they played the top of the people on their schedule, and there always seems to be some cracks that we didn't see before. So do you think that's just something because it's still a young program under Lanning? Do you think that there's some red flags with Oregon?
I wouldn't necessarily put it as like red flags because 3 years ago they would have been pinching themselves to be where they were last year, right? And then they built upon that this year, and sure they came up short, but they also beat Ohio State earlier in the season. Yes, that was at home, and it's a little different. And like let's call a spade a spade. You and I are not Dillon Gabriel guys. Like you and I love Dante Moore, and so I'm excited to see what they look like a year from now. But at the beginning of the season, we were kind of like, I don't know, this number one thing feels a little fugazi. The team's not waking up. And then when they just kept beating people by 14 to 21 to 30, it was like, okay, this is for real. And then they beat Ohio State, and that's kind of when the wheels came off the train here. But I don't think it was just such a strange season in college football in general that like we thought Ohio State was going to dominate the regular season, and they didn't. It ended up being Oregon. But I still think like it's program building, and Dan Lanning's young. He is a defensive guy, though. So these last two performances by Oregon make you kind of scratch your head a little bit. And we'll see what happens with recruiting and all that stuff. But I would have loved more from the defense. I don't think that flies, coaching for Kirby down to Georgia.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, there's no point that I'd be waving the red flag. I don't think it's an alarm bell situation where you're nervous, like, oh, God, can Oregon not beat these good teams now? Because it's a small sample size with Dan Lanning. Now, to the point of the defense, yeah, that's going to have to get figured out. I don't know if there's something that's getting beat, if it's a system, if you need to adjust, and just, we're getting shredded up at certain points, and our guys need to get better. But we'll see, man. Oregon, I'm curious about the quarterback situation next year because they've had 2 years but Bo Nix. Then they go to super experienced Dillon Gabriel. Now, he got ran out of Oklahoma for a reason. I'm putting that in quotes for the people listening. They thought they were better with Jackson Arnold. That completely backfired. I think they would love to have Dillon Gabriel, and I think Oregon was happy to have him based on the year they had. So I think it's still arrow pointing up for Oregon, but I want to get your thoughts on that just because I know some people are like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But let's close out here. Notre Dame crushes Georgia. And Tyson, it wasn't just the scoreboard, 23-10. Physically, they were banging with them. They were dominating the trenches. And I got to say, I've been taking shots at Georgia recently. Let me go out and say this real quick. If this team didn't have the Georgia logo, if this team didn't have the mantra of Kirby Smart and the national champions, we would be talking about them completely different. But that's the reality, right? Like you have the logo, you logo scout, you team name scout. Like that's just the reality of sports and the reality of college football. This team was not that good this year. I didn't know they won the SEC championship. I know they beat Texas twice, and congratulations. This team did not look like national championship contenders. Sure, Carson Beck went out. Even with Carson Beck, I know there are a lot of naysayers.
Might have been worse.
It would have been better with than Gunnar Stockton performed in this one. I know on paper, 20 of 32, 234, a touchdown. I don't know. You watch that game and tell me if you thought that he was a difference maker. I didn't necessarily think so. Tyson, their inability to run the football, 29-62, was something. Their inability to stop the run, 154 given up on the ground. Now, Riley Leonard was able to gash them. But again, we said this. Mobile quarterbacks have done that to Georgia. I'm down on Georgia as a state of a program. Now, that could be my mistake. Could be something that comes back to bite me. This does not feel like where they were a few years ago.
No, definitely not. This was the worst SEC in it feels like 20 years essentially. So yes, they won the SEC, but we're all dancing on the graves a little bit. I'm an LSU guy, and I don't understand the let's go to the conference rivals games and chant out the name of the conference. Grow up, touch grass, get outside. I wanted to see this happen because I thought that Georgia had an above average football season, but once Indiana got smacked around by Notre Dame and all these voices got really loud about how they didn't deserve to be in here and SMU didn't deserve to be in here, and it was like, guys, there's a team with a bye right now that might be worse than both of those programs, and they're going to trot out a freshman quarterback. And look, he was fine. He had some crazy, he's throwing the ball 400 miles an hour when there's probably a little bit of touch required, and Stockton will learn that as he grows. He got beat up. Like to start the game, he's getting hit all the time. I thought that Notre Dame did an excellent job disguising blitzes, and sometimes they didn't even have to. It was like, hey, we're bringing 7, you have 6, make a decision, and he chose wrong a lot of the time. Turnovers, stuff like that. But that's one of the things with the Georgia program when they ran off the 3 of them was like, yeah, make stupid decisions, and they're overcoming their own mistakes because they're so much better than you. And this season, it caught up to them with whether it was Carson Beck throwing 2 or 3 interceptions and having a fumble in a game that they aren't able to come back from, or when they almost let a team like Texas come back and beat them. I know it was like 30-15, but it felt like the whole thing was about to flip. This Georgia team wasn't talented enough, and they weren't disciplined enough. And that's something that kind of slides underneath the radar with the Kirby Smart thing, because it's funny to make internet jokes about like, oh, yeah, they're all driving too fast and they're drunk driving and he's lost control of the program. Look on the field. Like, it's 15-yard penalty here, and then it's defensive offside. Are you kidding me? Like, what do you think? It's 4th down. Like on the 15-yard line or whatever, they're not snapping the football, and even if they do, like it's going to be a Riley Leonard draw. You understand that's the play, and then you still go offsides, and it's just there were little things all year, and the crack in the armor only got bigger. It's going to be a good year for the boys in the Bayou next year. This SEC is looking a little soft, brother.
I know you're excited about it, and Tyson, to that point, and I want to talk a little bit more about Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Kirby Smart, man, a lot of excuses have been coming out of that program the past 2 years. A lot of excuses coming out of his mouth. Well, we're actually the best team. We should have been in the college football playoff. Well, we this and that, or well, this didn't happen. It's like, dude, you are the head coach of this program. Come on, like it's worn a little bit thin on me. I know people hated Nick Saban and the way he acted, but at least that guy took accountability. At least the guy stood up when. Sometimes he's always admit his mistakes, but at least he would take the bullets. Kirby's trying to deflect everything. It's like, come on, man. Like, you can't take the good and then not also take the bad. Like, it's to me, this Georgia thing has run a little thin. But I got to say, man, Marcus Freeman, we came on here and crushed him against Northern Illinois, and we've had to eat our words. We had to put our hand up damn near every week. Yep. This guy is a really good head coach. Yep. This team is really well coached. I don't know if they have the true athletes to beat Georgia on a consistent basis. But when it was a one-off game, when the team needed to be disciplined, when the team needed to be ready to play special teams, when the team needed to do the right thing, draw people off sides, do the little things to get the right first downs, to get the stop, Notre Dame did that. And that's been the story since Marcus Freeman's gotten it rolling a little bit after he took over the 1 year for Brian Kelly. Since then, it's been on a steady climb. This team is looking more and more like the way I think he wants to operate. I'm sure there's other things that they would like to improve on in terms of running the football, in terms of being better in the trenches and things like that. But the defense flies around. Defense looks like they're in the right spot, and they do enough things that they win football games like this. And this is the first time I think we can point at Notre Dame and say, oh, yeah, this is the version of a team that can compete with a Georgia, an Alabama, a Texas, and teams like that.
Oh, it absolutely feels different. I was a little tongue-in-cheek last week, but I meant it too when I said that they are the most SEC team left in the field for the SEC crowd. It's like, I want my physical football. That's Notre Dame. Like, they're playing the style of football that you want to watch, but the logo and the lack of logo, maybe the helmets don't look the same. The uniform doesn't look the same. This is the most real a Notre Dame team has felt as far as like, can this team win a national championship? They were awesome. Riley Leonard versus James Franklin in a college football semifinal is not a sentence that I think many people thought they would hear uttered in their lifetime, let alone this season. I'm excited for this one. I thought they also just there are 4 teams left. 3 of them have probably 3 of the top 5 running back rooms in college football, Notre Dame included. Like, they are physical. They run the football. The offensive line is huge. Look, it was fun to make fun of them when they lost Northern Illinois, and it was fun to imagine, well, look what Navy's going to do to them this weekend, and Army's going to get them, and they just beat the crap out of those guys. So there's a chance Northern Illinois has the funniest transitive property national championship of all time.
That would be the funniest, man. I mean, I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, if this Notre Dame team wins, it's Northern Illinois that beats them. That is going to be something funny. So let's give closing thoughts here on the reaction of the second round. To me, I got to tell you, man, I think these are the 4 best teams. Now, Oregon, you could probably argue is in, and I know people say this and that, but they got destroyed by Ohio State. So it's hard for me to make that argument right now. These 4 teams have been really good all year. Penn State's been awesome. Notre Dame outside that one loss. Texas outside, their one loss to Georgia in the SEC championship has really been a good football team. And then Ohio State, really outside of the Michigan loss. I mean, you got to give them credit for what happened on the road at Oregon. They've been dominant, and they showed up here. So I think this is a really good semifinal. I think this format works. We've had fun games. We've had fun moments. I think we'll tweak some things going into the next iteration with the buys and how we set things up. But I think this has gotten a ton of eyeballs on the sport, which is great. More teams were interested late into the season, which is what we talked about. And now we got 2 games to decide who's the champion.
Yeah, I mean, this would not have been where we ended up if it was still the 14 playoff, and that should show you right there that this is why the 14 playoff was not on the same level as the 12, and hopefully we get all the way up. Let's get to 24 one day and let this thing keep rolling, because college football is a weird thing, dude. It's fickle, it's strange. You can be the best team in the country one weekend, and then you can lose to Northern Illinois the next. So that's why it's the best, and this has been an awesome playoff. I'm just sad there's no more 𝐃𝐨𝐬𝐿.
Yeah, that is tough. And no more Genty, man. We lost some of our dogs in the trenches. But that's going to do it for us here. Like, subscribe, and share the show. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button on the way out. Share it with a friend. Share it with any, however you want to do it. We do just appreciate the support. Subscribe so you don't miss a single thing. As we're kind of wrapping up on football stuff, we'll have draft. We'll have transfer portal stuff. We'll have coaching carousel. We'll keep you covered on that front. But we're going to start turning our attention to basketball. So if you're a basketball fan, we got you covered on that front. Don't not worry about it. We have you to the next football season. So without further ado, enjoy the weekend. We'll get you set for the semifinal. Penn State's in it. I'm about to pinch myself now just saying that. So we'll talk to you guys next week. Peace.